Hey guys, this is QXC. In this game on Xel'Naga Caverns, I'm going to be talking about knowing when and how to contain your Protoss opponent in the Terran versus Protoss matchup. This is me, QXC, spawning as the purple Terran in the bottom left-hand corner, versus OptikZero, spawning as the blue Protoss in the top right-hand corner. The map is Xel'Naga Caverns, two-player map, natural expansions, gold expansions blocked by rocks, 4th base, 5th base, and 2 watchtowers in the center of the map. So if we slow it down a little bit here, very standard opening. One thing that's a little different is OptikZero is getting the early Zealot. This will delay his gas a little bit, and also make it a little bit harder for him to chrono boost out quite as many probes as he would like. You can see he's saving up energy on the Nexus for a little bit, and that just kind of gets dumped into the Stalker coming out of the gateway. Meanwhile, at my base, I'm going for 2 Tech Lab double barracks opening. This is an extremely aggressive opening where you get 2 barracks before the orbital command, and then make a Reaper, and then make Marauders out of both barracks, and just go and apply pressure. You can see a little miss micro with that Reaper early on. And this is too bad for me. Ideally, concussive shells would have already been done so that I could have picked off that Stalker. But as it stands, I'm going to be able to get it anyway. And this is really important. This is the first, when you want to, some builds just kind of naturally get contained. They early tech, they don't have a lot of units. You can just kind of push to the Toss's base with 1 or 2 barracks and build bunkers. When you get early kills like that, that is a sure sign to go try and contain the Toss and apply pressure. The other thing here is I saw that he built a robotics bay. This is a very committal move. I know that all the gas, the 200 gas here that he spent on the robotics bay isn't being spent somewhere else, so I'm pretty confident he's not doing any kind of tech. And so this kind of gives me license to go and abuse him. And when I say abuse, what this is basically going to look like is barracks rallied pretty much to his main for a little bit. I've got enough Marauders now that I don't really need to, and I'm going to be building bunkers right below his ramp. And so even though he's got this Immortal, it's very hard for him to actually move down the ramp and attack me in a way that makes sense. So you can see the Zealots pushing down. I can go ahead and just pick off these Zealots and abuse the fact that my bunkers are in the way of his Immortal. And all I'm trying to do here is buy time until my bunkers finish. Meanwhile, I'm expanding back at home and continuing to attack up. I take my second gas, and the reason for all of this here, and part of what makes this so effective, is I know without range he's not going to be able to break a bunker contain with Marauders in it. And in order to get range, he has to, he's already pretty all-in on this 1-base Colossus play, but in order to get range, he is so all-in. He's going to have 1 fewer Colossus. He's not really going to be able to do much with his just general army, because he has so few warp gates. So a couple things to note. When do you not want to try and contain the Toss? The hardest time to contain the Protoss is when they're going for 3 or 4 warp gate early on play, especially if they chrono boost it out really quickly. And basically what will happen there is you build these 2 bunkers outside their main, they go, ha ha ha, that's funny, they have a pylon right here, they warp in 2 production cycles, and they backstab you and you lose. And it's really unlikely you're going to be able to, I mean, it's conceivable that you could then counterattack and win, but between force fields and various methods of delaying, that can get pretty dicey. But any kind of tech build is very vulnerable to this kind of contain play. And you can see here I'm really, really far ahead economically. And so the key to keeping the contain on is to always be 1 step ahead of your opponent in terms of what they need to break the contain. So OptikZero, going Colossus with range to break my contain. So what should I use against that? Vikings. If he were going for like mass warp gate play, then I would just be massing more barracks units so that I could split up my army and still be able to deal. I could still keep the contain on while defending my main. One thing to note here is my Stimpax is really late. Ideally, I would have had that a bit earlier. But it's not a huge deal. Basically now, I just need to survive, and I will end up way ahead. And so the moment I see him break the contain, ideally I would have put down these bunkers about 5 to 10 seconds earlier, but I didn't think he had quite enough units to break the contain, so I wasn't too worried about it. But with his Colossus dead, it'd be really hard for him to counterattack me anyways. So with that being said, I'm going to keep producing units. I'm going to start making some Marines to deal with his Zealots, getting a couple Medevacs out to get my Marauders back to life. And at this point, I'm not going to say I'm relaxed, but I'm in a good spot. My expansion is way ahead of his. I have 17 more workers than he does, twice his income, significantly more supply, and once all my production buildings actually kick in, I'm going to be just miles ahead. So at this point, I'm getting my early medevac out. I'm going to get a turret to help deny scouting so that he can't abuse me with observers and Colossus and stuff like that. And I'm also kind of keeping this factory just to keep tabs on what he's doing. Some Protosses, after having their Colossus countered, will switch techs immediately, and so I don't want to be making Vikings if he's going mass Immortal Gateway units. So the factory's just kind of poking around. And what's really important here is the fact that I'm comfortable in my position, and I don't feel the need. I understand how to play the mid game of TvP to the point where I don't feel the need to just attack him, because attacking into this force with what I've got would be a mistake. I'm not saying I would lose. I'm just saying there are easier ways to win. And definitely taking a third, dropping him to force him back into his main, both really important, powerful techniques. And also what I'm doing here, I'm using my factory kind of check out where his army is, and I'm dropping some units in his main to take out his main tech structures. Meanwhile, I'm using my Vikings so that if he brings his Colossus back into his main to defend against this, I can try and use my Vikings to pick them off. One thing that's really dangerous here is if he goes for a big all-in counterattack and my Vikings aren't at home, that can go really bad for me. And so once I realize he's not defending his main, I kind of think, well, something must be up. And so I bring the Vikings back as soon as I can in order to defend against the potential counterattack. So here, bring out the SCVs, repair the bunker as best I can, stim all my units. And you can see here, I don't have the Vikings I would like, but they do get back just in time. And so now I force the Stalkers to the back, the Vikings kind of clean up, and the army, this attack is really not a big deal. And at the same time, even if he didn't have a forward pylon really, or it's kind of forward, but he couldn't really afford to warp in units to it because of my drop that it was in his main. And so you can see how I kind of worked my advantage from the beginning there. I used the contain to get an earlier expansion, I used the early expansion to get more production, and then I used my extra production to attack him in multiple places. Or rather, to bait the attack. Ideally, I would have attacked him at his natural and his main at the same time, but his army was aggressively placed, and so my drop provoked a kind of an all-in counterattack, which I was able to deal with because I was ahead initially economically. This is another kind of cool thing you can do, is when you know you're going to take the gold, start saving up mules, and so when you do take the gold, you end up getting a slightly higher return on them. And now at this point, you can see how my advantage early on has kind of spiraled out of control. I have 2 times his supply. My army is way bigger. He doesn't have any tech. It's really only a matter of time until the game is over right now. And so this all kind of came out of the fact that I saw, one, I got early kills here, and 2, I saw he was doing early tech play. And so from those two things, I was like, alright, bunker contain into fast expand, and then fast expand into more production units, playing safe, getting the units I need to counter his tech, delaying him as long as possible, and then using my superior army and numbers to attack him in multiple places and spread his army out. And you can see here I'm using my economic landslide to secure a 4th, but it's really unnecessary. The game is really over at this point. You can see here I'm just going to attack, move, and run him over. I think I knew he was going Templars or something. I'm not exactly sure why I decided to wait so long to attack. I think I was waiting for the ghosts so that I could be absolutely 100% sure that I would win with this push. Sometimes it's tempting to push too early and you end up kind of overextending and losing your army, or not coming out quite on top as you would like. And just the EMP makes this battle kind of a sure thing. So you can see here, I mean, there's really not much to be said. My army is just way bigger than his. My upgrades are better, that kind of stuff. So this is QXC talking about how and when to contain Protoss and what you can do to take advantage of a contained Protoss. GLHF. Peace.